Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another legal breaking reporting and video analysis update. U.S. Republican Senator of Alaska, Lisa Murkowski, has filed an amicus brief with the United States Supreme Court in support of Democrats challenging Trump's unlawful tariffs. Let's get into this reporting by Newsweek. Ladies and gentlemen, the article is titled GOP Senator Files Supreme Court Brief with Democrats Against Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, that article reads, Senator Lisa Murkowski joined congressional Democrats on Friday in filing a brief with the Supreme Court challenging President Donald Trump's authority to impose tariffs. Quote, when the president wishes to impose tariffs, he must comply with the existing lawful delegations of tariff power that Congress has enacted, or if he finds the authorities insufficient, ask Congress for new authority. Here, however, the president has usurped Congress's constitutional authority by impermissibly using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, unquote, attorneys for the members of Congress wrote. Ladies and gentlemen, why does it matter? Well, I'm about to tell you why it matters. It matters because the court has agreed to hear two cases related to Trump's ability to authorize tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA. In one case, Learning Resources and Hand to Mind, two companies that make educational toys and products, argue that the tariffs will cost them $100 million this year. The other challenge was brought by a group of 5 small businesses and 12 states. IEEPA is a 1977 law that allows the president to deal with any unusual and extraordinary threat, which has set its source in whole or substantial part outside the United States to the national security, foreign policy, or economy of the United States. If the president declares a national emergency with respect to such threat, unquote. Trump cites the IEEPA in executive orders related to reciprocal tariffs, which he states he has the authority to implement. Ladies and gentlemen, what to know? Well, I'm about to tell you what you need to know. What you need to know is a group of 36 senators filed an amicus brief in the consolidated cases, urging the Supreme Court to rule against the Trump administration that the IEEPA, ladies and gentlemen, my editorial edition, does not authorize the president to authorize tariffs. The only Republican senator to join this brief was Murkowski of Alaska, who has argued for limiting the president's power to impose tariffs without congressional approval. Quote, the uncertainty caused by tariffs have already impacted markets and capital investment, and soon they'll hit families, grocery stores, and local businesses, unquote, Murkowski said in a statement in April. Additionally, 171 representatives have signed onto the brief. The members of Congress argue that Trump is the only U.S. president to utilize the IEEPA statute to impose tariffs. Quote, presidents have used IEEPA to block financial transactions with hostile actors, freeze assets, and to impose targeted sanctions. Yet, between 1977 and 2024, not once did a president use the IEEPA to impose tariffs. The total absence of tariffs for nearly 50 years reinforce the conclusion that the statute does not authorize such measures, unquote. Members of Congress's attorneys wrote in a statement. The filing arrives ahead of oral arguments in the cases on November 5th. Attorneys for the Trump administration argued that the IEEPA grants the president the authority to enact trade measures in response to national emergencies. Yet, ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind that we are not in any national emergency like the Trump administration proclaims. Quote, IEEPA addresses national emergencies. The most important of circumstances and directly authorizes the president, the most important person in government, to take certain actions in response to those emergencies. IEEPA, on its face, is designed to address major questions, and thus it would make little sense to construe the statute to avoid addressing major questions, unquote. Attorneys representing Trump and his administration. Ladies and gentlemen, my editorial edition wrote in a July brief. The Senate previously overturned Trump's Canada tariffs in April, backed by all Democrats and 4 Republicans: Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Susan Collins, and Murkowski. Later that month, Republicans narrowly blocked a resolution against the global tariffs. Ladies and gentlemen, what people are saying, well, I'm about to go over that with you right now. Solicitor General D. John Sauer, Assistant Attorney General Brett A. Shumate, and attorneys Michael S. Rabb, RAAB, ladies and gentlemen, Brad Hinchelwood, Daniel Winnick, WINIK, and Sophia Shams, in a brief, said, quote, ladies and gentlemen, indeed, presidents have long imposed tariffs and other trade restrictions under generally worded statutes and their inherent constitutional authority, unquote. Attorneys Jennifer Hilleman, Peter Harrell, William Freed, Norton, Nathan L. Walker, Josephine K. Patrick, Celine G. Purcell, Rebecca Cutlow, and Emily Kirk, representing members of Congress, wrote in a brief, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, the President's actions are not consistent with the lawful power Congress granted in IEEPA in 1977, nor America's constitutional structure. If the President believes that imposing, removing, or amending tariffs is an appropriate policy measure, Congress has given him tools to pursue those goals, but IEEPA is not one of them," unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, what happens next? Well, I'm about to tell you that right now. The Supreme Court is scheduled to hear arguments in the cases on November 5th. Which, ladies and gentlemen, is coming up next Wednesday. Ladies and gentlemen, November 5th, 2025. I hope to God that the the correct side, just so that we don't get confused, ladies and gentlemen, wins. The side that is for the rule of law, unlike the Republicans. Ladies and gentlemen, do you have a story that Newsweek should be covering? Do you have any questions about the story? Contact livenewsnewsweek.com. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this legal breaking reporting and video analysis update. If you did enjoy this legal breaking reporting and video analysis update, please firstly like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy for more. And this is going to do it for the evening. Please tune in tomorrow for the morning briefing by Washington Post. See you all tomorrow.